Let me go to my next man, Michael Maloof. How you doing,
Morning.
Michael? You doing okay this morning?
I'm good. I had a little hard time connecting to you, but I'm in now.
You were here, so that's
I'm
all that
here.
matters.
I'm here.
Michael Maloof,
Thank
former
you.
senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst of RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, you are the man I want to talk to today because I'm
Well,
super curious on your take.
okay.
So,
Lay
Donald
it on
Trump,
me.
yeah, right. So Donald Trump goes to Alaska. Up to that point, it must be a ceasefire. It must be a ceasefire. Putin needs to stop. Oh my God, all these people are being killed. Oh my God, Putin has just gone crazy. And then he gets 50 days. You get 12 days. You get 10 days. And then it's let's have a meeting in Alaska. And after the meeting in Alaska, a lot of people were saying nothing burger, nothing burger. I heard the press conference and I was like, that doesn't sound like a nothing burger to me. It sounds like there's a lot of agreement. A day later, Trump comes out and says, we need a peace deal, not a ceasefire. And of course, Europe has a collective shit fit when he says it sounds like he told Europe whatever they needed to hear. Goes, talks to Putin, understanding the context of what's taking place on the battlefield. And it was like, they are crumbling and they're going to collapse. I need something in order to put a stop to this because this is going to look bad when it quits. He goes to the White House. All of the European leaders come in a humiliating parade of buffoons and degenerates. And they're asking him for all of this stuff. And Trump makes very clear there will be no ceasefire. Ukraine will not be in NATO. Crimea is part of Russia. We need these people to fight, which I thought was a fascinating comment. What do you make of all of this? What do you make of this changeover from ceasefire to peace deal? And what do you think he is legitimately going for a ceasefire? Or do you think this is another Minsk 3? Give me your thoughts.
I think as Trump got into the conversation more, into the issue more, and got into the weeds a little bit, he began to see the futility of a ceasefire. We've tried that numerous times, and each time they failed. And so if you keep trying the same thing, that's the definition of an idiot. So I presume that it was Putin who put forward the idea. Let's just go for a negotiated treaty, and then end the hostility altogether, which makes more sense, frankly, and that really puts that prevents kicking the can down the road, and that's what's been going on ever since Minsk II. This can kicking, and nothing gets resolved, and we continue to expend valuable resources, and we have other priorities. I also think it's a signal. It was a signal to the allies who insisted upon the ceasefire for their own purposes, so they could help rearm Ukraine, to that this game is over. That he has greater geostrategic designs with Russia, not just Ukraine. Ukraine is Europe's. I don't know what it is, but for some, well, it's their proxy, their war. They encouraged Ukraine to go when there was a signed agreement. Believe it or not, it was initialed at least, and then they were going to go sign back in 2022, and Boris Johnson and Victoria Nuland convinced Zelensky to not sign. We're going to back you up all the way, go full bore. This is principally because of the UK. I blame the UK for all of this. I think they are in the lead on this initiative, and the French and the Germans are just following at this point. And you got to look at the history, not only the history between the UK and Russia for going back 300 years, but also the history of Europe. They just can't stop fighting with each other. And why the United States needs to get entangled in it? We did it twice. We pulled the chestnuts out of the wars twice, and we have other priorities here at home. No one's coming to our assistance. No one's offering us foreign aid. And so consequently, these Europeans just have got to learn to get along. You would think they would because they're all neighbors, but no, they gotta be antagonistic toward each other. Look, when you look at the history of things, it's very clear that after the end of the Cold War, Russia made an overture to open up to the West, and the West rejected them. In fact, there was an initiative to resume Cold War 2.0. And this is where we are. They've never gotten out of that mindset, and everything is anti-Russian. The history of the UK, especially when it was an empire, and the Russians had an empire, and they were clashing constantly around the world, and even toward the U.S. colonies, when the U.S. colonies were trying to get established against the British. The British was imposing economic embargoes, and the Russians officially remained neutral, but they refused to honor that embargo. And again, during the U.S. Civil War, they actually backed Lincoln and parked the Russian fleet in New York Harbor, it just as a show of support. The history goes back considerably. So I think that what we've got here is an antagonism that goes back centuries, and they want to drag us into it. And you also got to look at the reality that if they want to arm Ukraine, which is what they really want to do, it's premised on U.S. support. And Donald Trump is telegraphing enough. And J.D. Vance made that very clear when he said, "We're done with it. Yeah. We may sell them weapons, but we're done with it. But it's their war. It's their dispute." I think we need to get on with renewing the geostrategic relationship, because there's a lot more at stake than just Ukraine. The evidence is in that there is no effort by Putin who want to take over all of Ukraine and all of Europe, like they try to jam down our throats with the help of the Western media. And the Western media, I will point out, has been very, very pro Ukrainian in its coverage. You never, ever hear of how the Ukrainians are bombing, or did bomb from 2014 on, the autonomous regions of the Donbass region, which ultimately asked Russia for help, and they came in and annexed the place after a referendum.
Yeah,
you didn't hear that. It went on for 8 years. It's still happening. The Ukrainians are bombing their own people. I mean, if I was being bombed by my own government, I think I would hate them too.
Yeah, they act like ethnic Russian Ukrainians were not Ukrainians. It's
yeah,
amazing.
In fact, they went so far as to try to eliminate the Russian language, the Russian culture, and we're seeing that constantly. What's democratic about that? We claim that Ukraine is a democratic country. Look, we're speaking out of both ends of our mouth and out of our you-know-what. I mean, this has gotten to be ridiculous if you apply common sense and everyday reality. For too long now, we've been looking at Ukraine through the prism of ideology rather than reality.
Agreed. We had military objectives that we wanted to accomplish, or geopolitical objectives, and reality mattered less. I want to show you something that just came out today. So before I just started the show, this document, I don't know if you've seen this yet.
No.
All right,
barely awake.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I'll just read it. Ukraine military losses exposed, 1.7 million dead and missing. Russian hackers have reportedly breached the Ukrainian General Staff's database, revealing catastrophic losses for the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the compromised digital registry, if the data is correct, Ukraine has lost 1,721,000 troops killed or missing over 3 years in the conflict. And what's the interesting thing is the breakdown. In 2023, 118,500. In 2020, I guess it's supposed to be, I'm sorry, in 2022, 118,500. 2023, 405,400. 2024, 595,000. 2025, the year's not even over with, we're just in August. 621,000. That number is going to be nearly 1 million by the end of the year by itself. They told us that the Russians were losing people in mass, that they were doing wave attacks. They gave us all that nonsense. And come to find out, it's the Ukrainians that were doing wave attacks. They were losing people in these kind of astronomical numbers. It's been exposed.
Well, I think that Ukraine has turned into a virtual cemetery. Look at all the flags that flutter of the dead, and we're seeing this constantly. And considering the overwhelming firepower of the Russian armed forces against the Ukrainians, yeah, the Ukrainians have put up a good fight, but they've always been trained traditionally to be defensive, not offensive. And they didn't have the means to undertake offenses. That's why they lost miserably. And the U.S. tried to give them training, but that training is predicated on having superior air power and also tanks and all the and equipment that keeps rolling in. They had very finite amount of supply, which had to be imported at like 20 or 30 at a time, and then they get destroyed within weeks. And that's what's going to happen now with this new revelation of a new cruise missile that Ukraine is supposed to have that goes 1,800 miles, carries a 3,000 kilogram warhead, and all that to go deep inside of Russia. It is identical to a UK missile.
To the old German missile. What is that thing called?
That's the Taurus.
No, the V2 missile, I think that the Germans used to use. The one that it looks almost exactly.
It looks like it does look like a V2, yeah. But it's launched on a launcher that, but it's heavy. It's said to be one of the largest that has ever been seen in the Cold War, and it lumbers along, and it can easily be taken out. But yet this is what the UK has to offer, and now it's being co-produced in Ukraine. Once they find that factory, then that'll be it. And I think this is just one further indication of how the Europeans are not going along. And the signals that Trump sent to the Allies was startling. And he didn't meet them at the door. He had his chief of protocol meet the leaders. He only met Zelensky, but that was a signal right there. But he met Putin directly. I mean, the body language was unbelievable. Basically, and then he had them all sit around like they were school kids, sitting in front of his desk, all en masse. I mean, the picture is they should all be embarrassed by the image. They have lost the influence. There you go. They have lost their influence. I mean, who does that? They're all you got so-called powerful leaders sitting at the foot of Daddy. Listen, get a lecture from Daddy, as they call him. I mean, that really shows you their influence today in this, and I think this is the beginning of the end of NATO.
Really?
Yeah, I think that they can go off and set up their own defense systems. They can set up their own little defense alliances, but the U.S. is basically saying we don't need this. We don't need this anymore, and they've been relegated to poodle status. I mean, you can see it. Just in that one image you just showed, that was embarrassing. Even the Italian prime minister said, "I don't want to talk to the press, and I don't like talking to my own press." Well, that was amazing. But it was Trump who did all the talking. And you look at Macron. The body language was just incredible. He's standing there in the joint picture, and he has his hands in his pocket.
Well, I think I have an audio clip from Macron at that meeting, and just to kind of indicate exactly what you were saying. This is Macron having a talk with Donald Trump.
Begin by clarifying the situation.
Emmanuel?
Thank you, Mr.
Surprised you
President,
said anything.
for organizing this meeting. And I would like to begin by clarifying a situation that happened not so long ago, where my wife, Brigitte, slapped me like a French little bitch inside the plane. As a couple, we have our problems. We started dating when she was 39 years old. I was only 18 at the time. I didn't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And
right.
But no, it wasn't that far from that. Like it was
it was on par with that. Yeah,
it was on par with that.
Yeah,
you got Meredith who made that statement. And speaking of Maloney, when Meredith is making the statement, her facial expressions are just perfect.
Oh yeah.
She seems annoyed. She doesn't want to be there. She seems humiliated, and other pictures
and bored. Ultimate bored. Yeah, total boredom. And I don't blame them. I don't blame her. I mean, they were all set up. They were there at Trump's bidding. I mean, who does that? Do you think Trump would ever flock to Macron's side and sit at a desk and sit at a table with a bunch of others? No, that would never happen in a million years. No.
Well, they decided to come. Trump didn't invite them. They decided to come. When Zelensky was summoned to come to the White House to have that conversation with Donald Trump, all of them were like, "We must protect Zelensky."
That's basically what it was. They were concerned that Trump was steamrolling.
Yeah.
Well, he did a pretty good job anyway with them present. Then he steamrolled them. So I thought it was perfect. But I think the message is clear. The U.S. policy is clear, and the direction is clear. And what Trump wants more than anything is a new geostrategic relationship with Russia, and that includes joint effort, joint ventures, whether they're economic, certainly political, and I doubt. Well, who knows? There might be some, and also international treaties. We have an opportunity here to get a new intermediate range ballistic missile treaty going. Right now, the world is very well threatened because it's no longer in existence.
What do you make of this? I understand what you're saying. What do you make of this? U.S. was prepared to use air power to support planned European force in Ukraine. And this gets doubled down on by Rubio, who goes on TV and effectively it's talking about NATO without it exactly being NATO. This is Rubio.
So these European nations, and some of these are NATO countries, are they willing to put troops on the ground in Ukraine to cement this peace deal? Would that make Ukraine kind of like a NATO ally?
Well, what's being contemplated, look, any sovereign country in the world has a right to enter into security alliances with other countries. You know, it's not just NATO. We have such alliances.
I'm not hearing anything.
Japan, other countries have it with each other. And so I think everyone would acknowledge, including, by the way, for the first time, the Russians.
Wait, Michael, you don't hear it?
No.
Okay. What he's effectively saying is all countries have the right to enter into alliances. And the United States, has every bit of right to enter into alliance with Ukraine or anybody else, just like any other nation. It sounds like what Rubio is saying in that interview is something like NATO without it exactly being NATO. And this idea of air power, Donald Trump said it at the meeting also. He was like, yeah, we may help them out, but it's on them. We're not entirely going to be engaged, but we may help them out. Then Reuters and the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the U.S. is contemplating air power in regards to some kind of deal that may take place. Basically, we will solidify this deal with U.S. air power if a peacekeeping force is in this region. Now, you and I both know that's a no on its face.
Well, first of all, a peacekeeping force. You're basically talking about countries that belong to NATO and not necessarily there under the auspices of NATO. That's just the difference without a distinction.
Yes.
Number one. But number two, it keeps us engaged in this conflict. And I don't know that we want to continue doing that. And it may be a trial balloon. I don't know, but just to hear that what you described as what Rubio said is like nothing's happened since the Biden years when Lloyd Austin went to Georgia and Ukraine and offered them NATO membership. Come on, knock it off. That's a non-starter. We've moved on.
The only thing that I think that is taking place here is if I take the best point of view of it, is that the Europeans didn't know that Donald Trump was going to talk to Putin in Alaska and come back and say, I want a permanent deal. They were shocked.
Well, yeah.
It's very possible that he is telling them anything that they need to hear to shut up. Effectively, oh yeah, you guys want this. Because nothing is settled. Nothing is agreed upon until everything is agreed upon in the way that Trump said. And so it's like, oh yeah, we may do this, we may do that, we may have troops, we may get troops from other countries, we may do all of this stuff. All of these things are maze. Like, this is what we might do. Nothing has been agreed upon. The Russians haven't said squat about anything.
No, they're going to stay the course. The Russians are going to stay the course, as they should. The West is floundering. They don't have a plan. This is clear. They have no plan. And to put the president of the United States in the position of being a negotiator, as opposed to just signing an agreement, there's no higher level to escalate an issue to, and it tells me that they're flying by the seat of their pants now, and even the Europeans are going to attempt. They will attempt. You watch. They will attempt to undermine everything that Trump is trying to do. And that, along with the mainstream media, combined with the neocons, are going to coalesce to try to undermine him altogether and undermine any effort to have a negotiated, signed agreement with Russia. But my hope is that Trump overrides that. He's really got to clean out the CIA. He's got to fire Radcliffe. I mean, he is a neocon of neocons as well. And I think that we're going to be seeing some efforts here where the UK will try to undermine. We see it already. The UK is leading the vanguard in efforts to try to get into the soft underbelly of Russia, and that is through the Caucasus right now. And it's the UK that's doing it. Again, they want to contain and if not have regime change in Russia. That's what their ultimate goal is, and they just can't help themselves.
Why do you keep putting this on the UK? It was Victoria Nuland.
Because they're doing everything. No, right now, this minute, the UK is very much in the vanguard on this. It was Boris Yeltsin. I'm sorry, Boris Johnson that initially told Zelensky not to finally sign the Minsk II. But that's going to be the basis on which they have a negotiated agreement, a settlement. If Putin decides to meet with Zelensky, he doesn't regard him as a legal representative of the country of Ukraine right now.
Agreed.
So that's another issue altogether. So we may see some action there in terms of hopefully internally of regime change within Ukraine, so that some form of legitimacy can be acquired and established. Even Trump has criticized it.
I do want to get to that, but real quick, Victoria Nuland was having that conversation saying F the EU.
Yeah, I know.
And came up with all of these people that they were going to put in positions.
Yeah. That was back in 2014.
Right. That's the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Look, this was an orchestrated coup by the U.S. Against Ukraine, and the Europeans went along with it because it had the effect of containing Russia.
From the standpoint of the coup thing is fascinating to me. I mean, the regime change issue. Is it possible that Donald Trump, I have a video, but you won't be able to hear the video, but what he's saying in the video is they asked him about a ceasefire. Trump says, we don't need a ceasefire. He says, look, we've had all of these wars that were solved. None of them had a ceasefire. And he said, in fact, I need them to fight. Now, the media never perked up and said, whoa, what do you mean you need them to fight? Trump's point is, if we give them a ceasefire, one side is going to build up weapons, build up military. They're going to do all this stuff. That's not going to be fair to the other side. And I'm like, that's true. Exactly. That's so true.
That's right.
But it's the I need them to fight part. And that's interesting to me. looking at that thing with 1.7 million Ukrainians dead or missing, if you need them to fight, what you're saying is, I need Russia to destroy Ukraine to the point where they're willing to negotiate. Meaning, I need them to be weakened. I need them to be in the worst scenario.
I don't think Russia wants to destroy Ukraine, and Putin has made it clear he doesn't want Ukraine, but he can't manage. He doesn't want to be governing Ukraine as well at this point. There would be so much resistance, insurrection, insurgency. It wouldn't work. So he'll probably go no further than the Dnieper River, but in the process, he's going to just cover the areas that are Russian-speaking areas to protect Russian-speaking minorities. And you're going to, in the West, you're going to see the Poles doing the same thing on the western part, because there are Polish-speaking people in Ukraine, western part. You got the Hungarians and all the rest. They have designs on western part of Ukraine. It's a fabricated country, and with all of these minorities, and all that Zelensky has wanted to do is destroy their religion. He wants to just destroy their culture, and particularly the people in the autonomous region in the east. They said, we're not going to put up with it, and they're the ones who have been hit for 8 years prior to Russian intervention on a daily basis by Ukraine itself. It was a civil war, and I think that now what the Europeans want the Ukrainians to do is start calling up the younger kids,
yes,
and bring them in, and you're going to see a flight of Ukrainians out of the country. But where do they go? Even the Western countries don't want them anymore. This is what I think is going to be occurring. There's going to be some turmoil, I think, inside the country itself if Zelensky doesn't voluntarily say, "Okay, I'm going to step down and call for elections." He's got to call for elections.
See, that's what I think Trump's counting on. And to be fair, yes, I'm being slippery with my language. I don't mean destroy Ukraine as a country. I mean, Trump needs Zelensky or Ukraine to be weak enough that they're willing to be more flexible into accepting some kind of agreement. And whereas he can't get that now out of Zelensky without saying, okay, I'm cutting off the weapons, I'm cutting off the intelligence, but he doesn't want to do that. If this war continues and they continue to lose more people and they continue to lose more territory and Sumy decides to leave, hell, maybe they make even a play for Kiev. In a certain situation, Ukraine will buckle and they may be willing to accept something that they're not willing to accept now. If Trump thinks that, then that is the reason why Trump is saying, I need them to keep fighting. I need them to fight. I need them to keep going at it. It's not like Ukraine is winning. It's not like Ukraine is in a better position. It's not like they're not losing huge amounts of men. Trump knows it at this point. So if he's saying, I need them to keep fighting, he's effectively saying, I need Ukraine to keep losing until they can.
I think he's trying to get them to, he doesn't want to, I think he wants to get the sides to come to their own conclusions. He's got to make it clear that our participation, U.S. participation, is going to stop. They want to buy the weapons. That's one thing, but we're not going to have the active program that we did. Look, the Europeans can't afford them. Let's just be, and the delivery of those weapons, you're not going to probably see them delivered for years because they got to be made. We have to make them, and our own war production facilities are limited right now. Plus, we have limited stocks for our own military. I mean, we couldn't fight we can't fight a one front war as opposed to a 3-front war is what they've been talking about. You know, it's just not going to happen. And I think that we're coming to a conclusion. It's almost as though Trump wants the Europeans to come to the same conclusion on their own, but they're fighting it. They know they've got to do something, but they're fighting it, and they're going to lose if they continue on with the mainstay with the approach that they're taking. They're counting on U.S. support, and I think that's going to wane. Now, that's why Trump reiterated no NATO in Ukraine. That also means no Ukraine into NATO. So, and consequently, he's, the Europeans are going to do what they want on a bilateral basis, and then that puts them in harm's way directly without NATO support. And I think that's the beginning of the end of NATO. It's over.
Michael Maloof, we'll end it on that. My man.
Okay.
Maloof is a senior security policy, or former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst, I can't get it out, and media, let's try that again, Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, you are always appreciated, man. Thank you for this.
Thanks for having me, Jamal.
You be safe.